It all stems back to 2007 when I met Kobe Bryant for the first time. I watched one of his really early morning workouts, and I noticed that he was just drilling down on a series of very basic fundamental movements. That really surprised me. So when I asked him about it, he said this line that still to this day is the foundation of everything I believe. He said, the reason I'm the best player in the world is because I never get bored with the basics. I've extrapolated that out and applied that to every area of my life. For me, my best life is living a fulfilled life. What are the pillars of living a very fulfilled life? There was a time 10, 12 years ago, and I would be either with my kids or at an event, and I spent more time trying to document that I was there or what I was doing instead of actually being present. I wanted the whole world to see what a great father I was being, when in fact, in that moment, I wasn't being a great father.
Alan Stein Jr., welcome to the Grateful Podcast.
Jack, it's great to be with you, my friend.
I'm so glad to have you. So, Alan, you have coached and coached with the greatest basketball players of this century, I'd say undoubtedly, including Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, meaning some of them even before they were in the NBA as teenagers. Now you're working with some of the biggest companies in the world, speaking, consulting, and helping apply what you learned in sports to everyday excellence and leadership. I'm curious, as someone that is young myself, like a lot of my audience, when you were in college and you were a student teacher and you just wanted to be a high school basketball coach, did you think that your life would end up looking the way it does?
No, I had no idea at that time. I've always been big on following the things I'm curious about, following the things that I'm passionate about, following the things that really light me up. And that red thread for my basically entire life has been the game of basketball. And I went to college in the mid to late 90s. And at that time, being a high school coach was one of the only options that I was considering. I just knew I really wanted to be around the game, but I realized very quickly that I wasn't as passionate about the teaching part as I was about the coaching part. So I decided to then pivot into being a basketball performance coach. While I was still a high school player and a college player at Elon down in North Carolina, I started to develop a love for what we now call performance training. At the time, it was just called strength and conditioning. It was lifting weights and doing plyometrics and doing agility drills, trying to get as big, fast, and as athletic as I could. And I really started to have a massive curiosity and passion towards that. So I decided to pivot and leave pursuing being a high school coach, and decided that I wanted to be a basketball performance coach and to train players on the athleticism side. But to answer your question, no, I had no idea that my life was going to take this turn or turn out the way that it has. And the cool thing is, at 50 years old, I have both the optimism and the delusion to believe I'm going to live another 50 years. I think I'm only at halftime of my life, and I can't even predict what my life will look like 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I'm okay with that. So no, I had no idea that I'd be sitting here with you right now talking about this amazing journey back in those days.
Well, Brian Johnson would say you're only a third of the way through, right?
Yeah, for Brian Johnson, he might be a third of the way through.
Yeah.
I'll take halftime. If I'm only a third of the way through, that's cool as well. But yeah, who knows what'll happen.
That's amazing. Was there a point where you started to realize, like, okay, basketball training, that is a career in itself? Because I imagine at that time, like something I can deal with right now, and I'm sure a lot of listeners as well, it's like they're taking steps that they have no answers to. Yes. They're doing things that the people around them have never done, and they're stepping into an unknown. And I'm sure you've seen that with a lot of the players that you're working with. They don't have family members who have been to the NBA, right? And so was there a point for you when you were like, I don't know that this is going to work out. I just have to trust in myself. I just have to bet on myself.
Yeah, it's kind of yes and no. I give a lot of credit to Tim Grover, who a lot of people have heard of, another renowned speaker. Tim's written a couple of phenomenal books. Relentless was an excellent book. Tim was the only person that I was aware of at that time in the late 90s that was making a full-time living as a professional strength and conditioning coach. And of course, he's famous for having trained Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and a whole host of others. But he was the only one at that time that I was aware of. Because keep in mind too, based on my age, I was pre-internet. I didn't have access to the information, the worldwide information that you and my kids have access to. So at that time, Tim was the only one that kind of proved the concept that this was actually possible. And Tim's model was specifically working with elite level NBA players like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. But that showed me that it could be done. What I decided to do was kind of take what Tim was doing, but take it down to the middle school and high school age. I wanted to work with middle school and high school age players because I felt in addition to helping them improve their on-court athleticism, I could also be a role model for them off the court, and I could teach them, intangibles like work ethic and respect and accountability and being a good teammate. So I decided that I would be a high school performance coach. But it was because someone like Tim kind of, broke down the door, the initial barrier to show that that was a possibility. And for that, I'm very grateful. And I've had a few opportunities to meet him, and there were a few camps that we worked next to each other. But, it's so important that someone can show you what can be done. I would imagine even you, this podcast you're building is phenomenal. But before we hit record, you were telling me about some of the folks that have podcasts that you've been watching and listening to for years, and they've showed you that what you're pursuing is possible. And to me, that's really important.
Yeah, mentorship is so important. And it's one of, I think, the most overlooked things in the world we live in today of instant gratification and seeing people online. There's like these short-term mentorships almost where you watch someone for 60 seconds and you're like, oh, I want to be like them.
Yes.
And then you see someone the next time you scroll and it's a different person and it's the same thing. And it's something you talk a lot about, which is this performance gap. The knowing-doing gap is what a lot of the old legends of personal development would have caused it. And I think it causes a higher frustration today than we've ever seen before because we have all this information. People know what they need to do better than ever before, yet they are not doing the things because there's an overwhelm of information coming from people from all sides of the world. And picking one mentor and listening to what they're saying specifically, or having just a select few and trying to optimize for those things are so huge. I wonder, did you see I've heard you talk about role players in the NBA, right? So you have JJ Redick and Kyle Korver. They're known for shooting, right? And that's the thing that they focus on. And now it's really confusing for people because we have a whole slew of things we feel like we need to be focused on. We want to have great relationships, but we want to make $1 million before we're 20 years old, and we want to travel the world, and we want to whatever, right? And that's really hard. What is something you noticed among the youngest and most elite basketball players that you were working with around focus and concentration that also related to their success?
Well, you just said so much really good stuff there, and I want to pull on a few of those threads. One, I'm a big believer when you're younger, when you're first starting out your journey, especially in a specific domain, that you should work on a wide range of different skill sets, that you should actually pursue a lot of different things to try and test different things out. And then over time, decide what you want your specialty to be or decide what you want to focus on. But you have plenty of time to do that. You mentioned, and again, these players might sound like throwback names for your younger audience, but, Kyle Korver and JJ Redick, even Steve Kerr and John Paxton. I mean, some of these guys are some of the best sharpshooters the NBA's ever seen. And those guys all had one very specific job: catch and shoot, catch and shoot. Not even dribble and shoot, just catch and shoot. That's how specialized they were. And they all had brilliant NBA careers, basically hanging their hat on one specific skill. Now, this doesn't mean they were horrible at other things, but it means that's really what they were excellent at. However, I'm sure that if you had a chat, and maybe you will one day, with Kyle Korver or JJ Redick or Steve Kerr, when they were young basketball players, they had to do everything. They had to handle the ball. They had to be facilitators and passers. They had to defend, they had to rebound for their position. So when you're young, you kind of have to do everything. I have the same belief for young entrepreneurs. When you're first starting out on your journey or first starting out your business, you need to know how every piece of the machine works. You need to know how everything operates. So you need to dabble in all of it and then decide what your lane or your specialty will be. So I don't think Kyle Korver or JJ Redick decided that they would be knockdown, dead-eye sharpshooters when they were in second grade. They were probably pretty good shooters for second graders, but they still had to do everything. And I'm a believer in that. And I can even look at my own career and say the same thing. I mean, when I was growing up, I played a wide variety of sports and did a whole bunch of different activities. And then as I got older, I could whittle that down and narrow that down to say, hey, basketball was my favorite sport. basketball was the sport that I was the best at, and it probably had the highest ceiling for me to continue. So as I got to be a junior and senior in high school, that's when I stopped playing the other sports.
Okay. So you have to experiment before you decide on what it is that you're actually going to move forward with.
That would be my recommendation. I think generally speaking, when you're younger, you tend to have more time available. You tend to have less, let's just say, adult responsibilities. And I know there's always exceptions, but usually when you're younger, you're not married yet, you don't have children yet. Like you have an opportunity to try different things. Again, before we hit record, you were telling me about all the travel you've done over in Europe. Like that's the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I'm very amicably divorced with 3 teenage kids, and I run my speaking business. It would be harder for me to go spend a month in Europe right now than it would have been when I was 20. Now, of course, the inverse to that is at 50, I have a lot more financial resources to make spending time in Europe actually more viable than when you're younger. But I think when you're younger, you should try as many things as possible, develop as many skills as you can, and then decide where you want to apply those. One of the things that I talk to my children about all of the time is you want to have as many options available to you as possible.
Mm-hmm.
When you are educated, you have more options than when you're not. When you have a big network and a big friend circle, you have more options than when you don't. When you are healthy and fit, mentally and physically, you have more options than people that are not. So I encourage my kids to invest their time, their love, their heart, their soul, their resources into things that give them more options so that when you get older, you can choose which of those options you think will be the best fit. And then that's something that you can pursue with just obsessive focus and a relentless obsession.
I love that. Yeah, there's one of the core principles of adolescent psychology is this idea of commitment and exploration and your identity. So you have like basically picture a quadrant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the y-axis, you have exploration. On the x-axis, you have commitment.
Love it.
And nowadays, people tend to stay in this a lot of exploration, not as much commitment, right? But in order to get to an identity achievement, you need to have that exploration before you have the commitment.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of people that will, let's say their parents were a lawyer and they're told that they're going to be a lawyer. They end up in that commitment with no exploration. And that's when you get to a midlife crisis, right? Where you've spent your entire life being like, I've done this thing, but it wasn't for me.
Yes.
And so that time as an adolescent, in your early 20s, exploring your options and, like you said, getting as many options as you can.
Yes.
Through your network, through education, through travel. That is what you should be doing if you want to end up committing to something that you actually do love, right? Like in not getting lucky, at least with it.
Yes, absolutely. And with that, I also encourage my children and all of your viewers and listeners to work on skill sets that have the highest utility. Things like leadership, communication, the ability to sell. Like those are things that transcend every industry. So the beautiful part about those, if you work and develop those type of skill sets, then when you start leaving the exploration quadrant and you move into the commitment quadrant, you'll be able to take those skill sets with you because those skill sets apply to all 4 quadrants in every single area of life. There is not a meaningful endeavor in this world that you wouldn't be better served having good leadership skills, good communication skills, good interpersonal skills, a higher emotional intelligence, a high level of mental and physical fitness. Like these things will help you in any area of your life. It doesn't matter what it is that you're pursuing. So you might as well double down on skill sets that have the highest utility and can be applied anywhere because you're going to use them at some point. And that's, again, the stuff that I preach to my 3 teenage kids and to anyone that's willing to listen. And to this day, even at 50 years old, I still continue to sharpen my sword on the skill sets that I believe have the highest utility. Because, one thing that we're obviously all experiencing right now with AI is people are wondering what role is AI going to play, especially in the job market tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And while people can make some predictions, I don't think anyone knows for certain what that's going to look like. Although, it's rumored to be that there are certain vocations that may become obsolete because they could get replaced by AI.
Yeah.
And whether that's going to come to fruition or not, we don't know. But I know for a fact Leadership skills will never be replaced by AI. Interpersonal skills and communication skills cannot be replaced by AI. Emotional intelligence cannot be replaced. Relationship build, that stuff cannot be replaced by AI. So the big winners in this world are going to be the ones that continue to double down and work on mastery of the basics and the fundamentals in those type of skill sets, while simultaneously leaning into and being open-minded and curious enough to try to figure out, how can I use AI to amplify and supplement the skill sets that I have? And those that can do those two things together will be the ones that win, because AI is not going to replace someone that has those skill sets, but it can be an amplifier to help them make those skill sets even more powerful.
Yeah, dude, that is gold right there, because the Western culture for years, for centuries, has focused on these hard skills of mathematics, science, and all of that. But that's what AI is best at.
Yes.
So I was talking to an AI researcher, or no, more of a workplace researcher, about this exact stuff, and he was saying the same thing. Like, the highest value skills now are the soft skills.
Yes.
And I heard you tell a story about Kevin Durant as a young kid.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think of when you think of an NBA superstar, at least my, I guess, pop culture belief system around that is, I think of them as being these just superstars and being skilled individuals. They're the talented ones, right? But what you said is he had high character from a very early age. And when I hear you talk about these players, that's what separated them. Not that they were the best shooters, not that they were the best scorers, not that they were the best passers, that they had these character traits from a young age. And that is what takes you from being good to excellent to great. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. And the reason character is so important is talent can take you to different levels and can open up different doors and give you different opportunities. But if your character's not there to support it, or your character's not on par with your talent, then you're going to make some poor decisions and the whole thing's going to be able to crumble. So it's vital to, again, develop these soft skills. Now, as someone that's always been infatuated with and studied language, I wish that we didn't call them hard skills and soft skills, because I feel like there's a misnomer with that. I feel that it's an inappropriate connotation, because when I hear the word soft, I think of easy. And what we're calling soft skills, there's nothing easy about having a high emotional intelligence. There's nothing easy about emotional regulation and interpersonal skills. So while they're called soft skills, they're actually the epitome of being a mentally tough, resilient human being. I wish that whoever labeled those however many decades ago would have called them something different, because there is nothing easy about developing soft skills, and they are absolutely the most important. They have the most utility. And as you just said, at least at present time, AI will never be able to replace those types of skills, which is why all of us should be working on them continually.
What would you rename them if you could?
That's a great question. I don't know that's probably above my pay grade to give them that, that name, but it's something that I think about a lot, because that's where I think originally a lot of those skills became undervalued, was because they were just kind of put in this bucket of, oh, these are just kind of soft skills. And again, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, they're the hardest and most difficult skills to develop, because they're constantly maneuvering, and they take interaction, they take being fluid, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with the hard skills of math and science. Like, those are incredibly important, especially depending on what vocation it is that you want to go into. But math and science really aren't going to change. It is what it is. But the soft skills change all of the time.
Yeah.
Like, part of soft skills is me getting to learn you and to speak your language and to find out your interest and your communication styles, so that if you and I can develop the most effective relationship possible, it's kind of a dance between us. Whereas then if I'm talking to someone else, it's a slightly different dance. Like, the music has changed a little bit. So it's not a carbon copy. It's not the way that I communicate with you is not going to be identical to the way that I would communicate with someone else. And as a leader, that's really important to know that, because as a leader, you need to be chameleon-like enough to speak the language of the person that you're communicating with. So if you're running a team of 10 different, 10 people on your team, like, you've got to be able to speak 10 different languages and find out really what motivates and inspires and drives each of those people so that you can push the right buttons to get the most out of them and to empower them and to challenge them and to hold them accountable. So that's why these skill sets, no one can ever master them.
Yeah.
I believe on working towards mastery and going in that direction, but it's kind of like the game of golf, which I don't play, but from what I've been told, no one masters the game of golf. You have some really good days, you have some not good days, you hit some really good shots, you hit some not so good shots, but you don't master the game of golf. Even the best players in the world occasionally hit bad shots or have a bad round or have a bad day. So no one masters it. And it's the same thing with emotional regulation, with emotional intelligence, with interpersonal skills and communication. I don't think anyone ever masters it. Now, you get to a point where you get better at it more consistently, but these are things that we all have to work on relentlessly all of the time.
Yeah. It brings up one of my favorite skills that you've talked about as well, which is coachability.
Yes.
All my friends will tell you that I'm not the most naturally gifted at anything. Like, I am not the most athletic person. I am not naturally the most social person or the smartest person. But the one skill that I've been blessed with is coachability.
I love it.
And that seems to be one of the biggest differentiators from good to great to excellence, right? How does one develop coachability?
Well, there's two words that pop into mind when I hear coachability. The first thing I think of is open-mindedness. And an offshoot or a sister of open-mindedness is curiosity. And I think those are two unbelievably powerful traits that we can work towards and we can continually try to develop. But the other word that I think of when I hear coachability is humility, is being humble. And here's why that is so important. When you're humble, you stay open-minded to hearing someone who's trying to coach you. Like, you stay open to coaching.
Yeah.
You stay open to feedback. When you're open-minded and you're humble, you stay open to the fact that no matter how good you get, you know you can still get better. So you don't play the comparison game to say, hey, I'm better than you, so that's good enough. What you're comparing yourself to is two things. One, you compare your current self to your previous self and ask, am I getting better in whatever skill set that I'm trying to improve? Or is my business getting better? Are my relationships getting better? Is my fitness getting better? But am I moving in the right direction is a really important question. And then you also want to compare your current self to what you believe you're capable of. Am I doing as good a job as I believe that I'm capable of? Of course, none of us actually know 100% what we're capable of, but you usually have an idea. I'm sure you have an idea after a workout. Could you have worked just a little bit harder? Could you have eked out one more rep on that set of squats? You know, when you're done an interview, you could probably go back and say, hey, could I have prepared a little bit more? Or could I have asked? And those are healthy things to ask. I don't encourage you to ask them to then feel less than or to feel like, oh, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Yeah. No, it's simply a yardstick to say, am I better than my previous self? And how am I comparing to what I believe I'm capable of? And that's where I actually think comparison is healthy. I know one of the things that floats around on social media all the time, and I'm sure that I've put that out there, is that old quote that comparison is the thief of joy. And to some degree, I do believe that. And I believe in the sentiment behind that. But it's actually, comparison's not the problem. It's what we do with the comparison that can create the problem. If we compare ourselves to what other people have and we compare ourselves to other people's outcomes, and the result is it makes us feel less than, or it makes us feel like we're not good enough, then it will absolutely rob you of joy. But if you use comparison the way that I just recommended and suggested, which is compare your current self to your previous self, or compare your current self to what you believe you're capable of, then comparison can be a very helpful tool. It can be something that can drive motivation and ambition and can push. So I don't believe that we should, paint everything with the broad brush of never compare. I mean, at the end of the day, life is all about comparison.
Yeah.
But what we have to be careful of, and this is where I think this is the reason that people are bringing this quote up, is so much of the comparison is done online, on social media, with people we've never met. And we're just assuming that what we see on their Instagram is actually their real life. And we compare that to what we know our real life is. And then we feel less than. We go, this person has fill in the blank. They have more money. They have more friends. They have more followers. They have more, whatever it may be, and that leaves us feeling less than. So that's the trap that I certainly want to warn folks to be careful of pursuing. But as a general rule, comparison can be a very, very helpful tool.
We're comparing our gag reel to everybody else's highlight reel.
Yes, absolutely.
I I agree that self-comparison is really important, and I think it's necessary to grow, but I know personally I've taken it too far. And
Sure.
that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, and it's called The Grateful Podcast to begin with, because I would constantly create a big forward gap, a gap that made me feel disappointed in myself, where I thought that I should be doing way more than I was. My ambition was kind of on a runaway train, and every time I accomplished something,
Sure.
I would move that goalpost a little bit further. And I realized that I needed to not just have those big goals. Those were important and they would never go away, but I would need to have gratitude for what is now. Because in the persistent, consistent pursuit of more outside of me, I was actually devaluing the one thing I was ever guaranteed, which is the present moment, right? And
Absolutely.
so I think that's where you can start to check yourself on your self comparison is it taking me out of the present moment? Am I devaluing the things I have right now because I'm so focused on more, more, more in the future?
Yeah.
And I imagine athletes, high performers, the people you're working with at big companies and executives feel that all the time. Is there a way that you help them not go too far in that forward direction?
Man, again, so much really good stuff there. I wish I would have known a fraction of this stuff when I was 19. So you're really on the right path. But you said something there that also sparked another thought, and that is when we're comparing, we're often comparing where we are and someone else is at a different spot on the journey. Once again, before we hit record, we were talking that we both love Chris Williamson and the Modern Wisdom podcast. Phenomenal show. I've been listening to it for, 6 or 7 years now. So I started listening to Modern Wisdom before it became the global behemoth that it is now. And the reason that I share that is I've also been watching and listening to your show, and you do a phenomenal job. But as to your own admission, you're more on the front end of starting your endeavor out now. Chris already has a whole handful of years behind him. So if you compare your podcast now to where Chris's is now, it will most likely have you feel less than or feel that
Yes.
you're way behind. But you don't want to do that. What would be a more helpful comparison tool was if you could find out where Chris and Modern Wisdom were when he was around this stage of where you are, and compare those two things. I don't know how many episodes you've done or how long you've been doing the podcast, but if you could find out where Modern Wisdom was around that same landmark, that would be a more helpful reference point.
Mm.
Now, similarly, you mentioned mentorship, and I think mentorship is incredibly important, but a lot of mistakes that people make, and I'll use myself as an example. So I've been in the corporate keynote speaking game for 9 years now, almost a decade. So, I'm not brand new. I'm not a rookie, but I'm also not a seasoned veteran. I know people that have been speaking for 30 years, but I've got 10 years, almost 10 years of very solid experience. What happens a lot of times is folks that want to start speaking reach out, and I believe in trying to help as many people as I can. I believe in sending the elevator back down because I can tell you so many people have done that for me.
Mm.
But what I try to make sure they understand is when they're just starting out, to not compare their craft or their current business with where I am 10 years in. What I make sure to do is rewind the tape and go back and say, hey, when I was first starting, here's the things that I was doing to get my business going. Here are some best practices that worked really well for me. And here are a couple of landmines that I stepped on that I would highly encourage you to avoid if you can. But don't ask, if you're reaching out to someone that you would hope would mentor you or someone to give you advice, don't so much ask what they're doing today. Find out what they were doing when they were at your stage, because that will be much more helpful information.
I had a friend the other day that came up to me and told me how much this show means to him right now, how much value he's getting out of it, how much he's learning, and he wanted to show me his favorite episode of the show. So he pulls out his phone and he pulls up YouTube, and when he gets to my account, he wasn't subscribed. Now, he thought it was so embarrassing. I kind of found it hilarious, but it prompted me to look at the statistics, and I found out that 62% of you are not subscribed to the channel. Now, that's all right. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but if you get value out of the content that me and my team are putting out there for you, if you feel like this is improving your life and the Grateful Podcast is having an impact on you and you want it to keep getting better, then the one simple free thing that you can do for me and my team is hit that subscribe button. It shows the world that we have value to give, and it helps us continue to show up better each and every week, bringing on better guests, increasing the production quality, and putting out more content for you guys to continue to show up better in the world for tomorrow. So if you feel like this has any value for you, I would encourage you just to hit that button. And I really, really appreciate the impact that we're having on the world together. You're a part of this journey, and that's one of the coolest things. You have made an impact by being here, by sharing the knowledge and the wisdom that you gain, and by applying it into the world and creating a ripple effect. So thank you. Now let's get into the episode. It's interesting because you do teach what the greatest athletes of all time have done for the everyday person. So how do you change I guess to back up for a second, I can't listen to what Kobe Bryant was doing and do exactly that if I'm a 15-year-old basketball player, because he's the greatest, and he's in the NBA, and I'm a high school freshman, right? Theoretical situation.
Sure.
But how do you distill the information from these phenomenal top 0.001% people for the general, more average public?
I break it down to the traits of highest utility and say, which are the traits that you would be best served by trying to emulate. And again, this would not, even if you were a 15-year-old high school freshman that wanted to be a great basketball player, I wouldn't encourage you to try to be Kobe Bryant, because there was only one and there'll only ever be one. But what I would encourage you to do is emulate some of the traits that allowed him to become Kobe Bryant. Things like his work ethic, his attention to detail, as you said earlier, his ability to be coached, his coachability. And you can implement and apply those things to your life. And that's really what I do now when I'm working with corporate groups. You know, to me, one of the biggest separators in the world and one of the most important controllable superpowers on the planet is consistency. Is consistency. It's doing what needs to be done regardless of how you feel. Consistency is not about whether you feel like it or whether you want to or whether it's convenient. Consistency is about doing it every single day. And now you have to decide what are the things that you want to be consistent in. That is not for me to tell you how to live your life. But I can tell you right now, consistency is a superpower that Kobe Bryant had. And right now, you could list any high performer in any area of your life. It doesn't matter if it's a musician, an actor, an investor, a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, an athlete. I can promise you that one of the reasons they're good at what they do is consistency. Because if it's important, you focus on it, you work on it, you think about it every single day. And to me, consistency is a superpower that all of us have available.
Yeah.
But not many people choose to use it. And I learned at a very early age that it could be a massive separator. So if you had a list of words to describe me, if I got to choose what those words were, I would hope that one of those words would be consistent.
Interesting. Yeah, consistency is one of those necessary traits for success, but it also doesn't guarantee success.
No.
And that's one of the hardest things about consistency. One of the lowest points for me with this podcast was in the wintertime. When I started it, I'd said, I'm going to publish 3 episodes a week for 6 months straight so I can get good at interviewing. And that's the one thing I wanted to do, because that's what Chris Williamson did in his early days. And I'd done what you'd said. I went back. So I did that. And after a year of publishing, after 3 episodes a week, I realized that I still wasn't where I wanted to be. And consistency was one thing I was doing, but I wasn't consistently getting better. And I'd over-optimized for consistency. And I think that's another mistake that someone that's a little above 0, but not close to 100 can make, where they think consistency guarantees success. But no, consistent shit doesn't guarantee success.
Yes. Well, there's so much good stuff there. Well, first, let's go ahead and make sure we're on the same page that nothing guarantees success, that there is no guarantee. And the understanding, the acknowledgement, and the surrender to the fact that nothing guarantees success, I think, is important. But we talked earlier about Kyle Korver.
Yeah.
One of the things I had heard Kyle Korver say was that he didn't necessarily have a time limit on his shooting workouts. He would basically shoot until And then he had a little pause. He said, until his form started to break down or his footwork started to get sloppy based on fatigue. And the reason that he stopped then was he didn't want to get repetitions of doing things with incorrect form or with bad footwork. And his terminology was, I don't want to get good at bad shooting. And I just absolutely love that. So he realized that, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 90 minutes, but at some point, mental and physical fatigue would cause him to be a little bit sloppy on his shooting form and on his footwork. And that's when he would pull the plug, because he wanted to make sure that he was only getting in high quality, perfectly executed and precise repetitions. So you raise a great point. Yeah, it's not just consistency. It's consistency in doing things right and correct. It's consistency in being open to feedback in real time so that you can actually course correct and make little adjustments. So, one of the things that I think, unfortunately, has been very misconstrued is this 10,000 hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell kind of brought to the masses in Outliers. And there was this concept that if you do something for 10,000 hours, you'll be pretty good at it. I mean, that's the summary of it. But what a lot of folks haven't understood is that's not just 10,000 casual hours. That's not just 10,000 hours of going through the motions. It's not just putting in the time card. It's 10,000 hours of deliberate practice where there's actually a feedback loop where you can measure if you're making improvement. So going back to you doing those podcasts, now on some level, my guess is just doing that many interviews, you will get better at interviewing, the skill of active listening, but you might not get as better at it as quickly as if you had some type of feedback loop. If maybe you had a coach that has done, 100,000 interviews and could sit back and watch each interview with you after and point out some things that you could consider. Or if you went back and watched the film yourself so that you could pick some of those things out, those types of steps would then make it deliberate practice and would make sure that your consistency is compounding with competence, which is then how you'll get better quicker. So it's not a matter of just logging hours or being casual. It's being hyper-focused and very specific and deliberate with what it is that you're trying to be consistent with. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because you're right. Consistency in and of itself, you could be consistently doing the wrong thing over and over, and you're going to start working in the other direction. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. And from my understanding with your work, you should also be consistently focused on the few things that really do matter and guarantee your success.
Yeah.
There's a story about a college team, and there was a few qualities that guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but 98% chance of winning. Can you explain that story to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we have to figure out what are the prime movers. And for me, it all stems back to 2007 when I met Kobe Bryant for the first time, and he said something that fundamentally changed my life. It was my assertion that at that time he was the best player in the world, and I watched one of his really early morning workouts, and I noticed that he was just drilling down on a series of very basic fundamental movements, pivoting drills, ball handling drills, finishing drills, but basic stuff that I had done with middle school and high school age players. And as a young coach, that really surprised me. So when I asked him about it, he said this line that still to this day is the foundation of everything I believe. He said, the reason I'm the best player in the world is because I never get bored with the basics. I continue to work towards mastery of the basic building blocks. And I've extrapolated that out and applied that to every area of my life. So I pick a domain that I'm aiming for excellence in. It could be keynote speaking. It could be writing. It could be my own physical fitness. It could be being a father. But I figure out what's an area that I want to improve in and I want to aim for excellence. And the very first thing I do is I define, well, what does winning look like in this? What does being an excellent father look like? What does being in excellent shape as a 50-year-old man look like? What does being an excellent keynote speaker look like? And I decide what winning looks like. And that is completely up to me. That's not up to anybody else. So I decide what winning looks like or what success looks like. And then the very next question I ask is, what are the basic building blocks or the fundamentals that if I stick to these and work on these relentlessly and consistently and improve in, it will lead me to the path of excellence or winning in this area? So in other words, what are the 4 or 5 basic fundamentals that I need to do to be the best father I'm capable of, to be the best keynote speaker I can be, to be as fit as I can be as a 50-year-old man? And I figure out what those building blocks are, those fundamentals, and then I go heads down and consistently work on those things every single day. during the unseen hours, during the seen hours, but I focus on those basic building blocks because I believe if I can make drastic improvement in those fundamental building blocks, then the only byproduct possible is going to be what I've considered winning or excellence or success in that area. And you had asked about the Queens men's basketball program. That's basically what they did. They figured out that there were 4 key statistics that would determine whether or not they would win the game. And then they just made sure that everything they did came down to improving those 4 areas of the game. Made sure every workout, every practice, every film session always focused on those 4 things. Because as you said, if they did those 4 things at a high level and executed those 4 things with excellence, in their case, they won 98% of their games, which is a pretty good winning percentage. But that means if they don't do those 4 things or don't execute, then the chance of winning goes down significantly. So for me, it's all about simplifying success, focusing on the basics and the fundamentals and working towards mastery of those. And you can be good at anything. Now, whether or not you can be world class in it is not completely up to you, because that also, there's some determining factors, and whether or not you have talent in that area. Do you have some, genetic predispositions? So if I enjoy singing, and I decide that I'm going to work on the 4 or 5 things that would lead to being a better singer, there is no doubt that I'll make improvement. Now, whether I'll be good enough to win American Idol or to get a record deal, a lot of that has to do with whether or not I have the talent to do that. So I'm not implying that you can be world class in anything that you say you're going to commit to the basics, but you could absolutely make improvement.
My friend Allison told me this crazy statistic the other day. 95% of people believe that they're self-aware, while only 10 to 15% really are. And this gap is incredible. And I have only recently started to understand how important self-awareness really is in both internal and external success. Most of the most successful people that you talk to only focus on what they're so good or so great at, and they leave behind all the things that they suck at. But I know that you know someone in your life who is so terribly unself-aware, if that's even a word. I know that you know the person that doesn't understand how they show up in the world around them, how they're experienced by the people around them, or what they are good and bad at. And heck, that person might even be you, which is why I really want to get Interview into your hands. Interview is a software that allows you to take a self-assessment and compare it to anonymous feedback of the people closest to you, and it allows you to close the gap in self-awareness so you can get clear on what you're good at and how you show up in the world for the people around you and yourself. Now, when people become more self-aware, they're able to focus in on the things that they're great at and achieve more tomorrow while still being grateful for what they have right now, because they're able to get more bang for their buck in their relationships and with the people around them. So if you want to understand how you show up in the world and how you're experienced by the people around you, go to interview.com, INNERVUE.com, and use the code GRATEFUL20 for 20% off a tier 2 assessment on Interview, plus a complimentary coaching session with an interview coach to become more self-aware and achieve and be more grateful tomorrow. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Alex Hormozi says, do so much volume that it's unreasonable that you will not succeed.
Yes.
And I love that term, the make it unreasonable that you won't succeed. And I wrote some lyrics from one of my favorite songs by J. Cole. You know J. Cole?
Of course.
Dude, he's my favorite. And he said this line that is on this sentiment that's one of my favorites. He said, like, the second time I got cut from the junior varsity, fighting back tears, I promised to switch gears and said to myself, whatever you do, you won't do it partially. From this day forward, I move with a new ferocity, for I cube velocity, a fail-proof philosophy. Success is in the effort. So if a brother tried his hardest, I'm at peace knowing God ain't deal it in this group of cards for me. And I love that line. If I try my hardest, I'm at peace because I know that God didn't deal it in this group of cards for me. And whether you're religious or not, that idea that try so hard that you can't be mad at the world, that there's no regret, there's no what if, because that question of what if it eats at you. Try so hard, do the right things so much that it becomes pretty much unreasonable that you won't succeed. And
Absolutely.
if you don't succeed, it wasn't meant to be.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm a big J. Cole fan, so his lyrics are off the charts. He's also a really good basketball player, by the way.
He
In
is.
celebrity circles, he's one of the best basketball players that's a non-professional player. So I can see that he put in the work. The way that I've always framed that for myself and I frame that for my kids is if there's ever going to be a reason that you don't reach a goal or there's a reason that you are not successful, do not let it be because of something within your control. So effort is absolutely within our control. Our attitude is within our control. Our enthusiasm is within our control. Our preparedness, how well we prepare in preparation is within our control.
Mm-hmm.
The decisions we make or the responses we have, those things are in our control. So don't ever let those be the reasons that you fall short of a goal or that you're not successful. If it's because of something else, if it's because of something that's outside of your control, you'll still be disappointed that you fell short or that you missed your goal or that you weren't successful. But I know from firsthand experience, you'll eventually find peace in knowing that you did everything you were capable of and in control of to give yourself the chance to be successful. And it just didn't work out. And that's because, as we've said before, but it is worth repeating, success is never guaranteed. If it was guaranteed, it wouldn't be as joyous when you actually are successful in something. So, you can do everything right. And sometimes the chips just don't fall in your favor. And that's, to a T, that's sports.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the game of basketball. You can play hard, you can play smart, you can play together, you can execute. And some nights the ball just doesn't go in the basket. Some nights your opponent's a little bit better and they executed a little bit better than you. And you'll learn to be at peace with that. What you will not be at peace with is if the other team outworked you.
Right.
Or if the other team was more unselfish than you were. Or if the other team had a better attitude and played hard. Those would be unacceptable reasons to lose. But to me, and I find this type of approach and this mindset to be very liberating because it puts me in the driver's seat. And it basically says, I'm in control of my destiny. Now, I'm not in control of what outcomes I get, and I'm not in control of whether or not I'm going to actually ring that bell of success, but I'm in control of my attitude, my effort, my enthusiasm, my preparation, my decisions, my responses. And I tell you what, that's plenty of things to be in control to navigate an unbelievably amazing life.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of Jim Murphy, who wrote Inner Excellence. I had him on the podcast and he talked about how he will never use the words winning. The word winning is never brought up with him and his clients. And he works with some of the greatest athletes in the world right now, as you have. And winning is never brought up because the outcome is not the focus. The focus is the input.
Yes.
And what you're focusing on, you will do well. And so if you do the inputs well, you are skewing the odds in your favor to win.
Absolutely.
But we're not focused on winning. We're focused on improving, and winning should be a byproduct of that.
Yes. And anything that you'd want to substitute the word winning for, we could, in this case, it sounds very synonymous to say success. Same thing. You don't have to focus on whether or not you're reaching a level of success. You got to focus on the process, focus on the inputs, focus on the things you have control over. And then success by any measure will just be the natural byproduct of that. And this is true in every area of our life. It's true financially. It's true for our fitness and our wellness. It's true for everything. Like the chips are going to fall where the chips are going to fall. We don't control that. But say for our physical fitness, you have control over what you eat and when you eat it. You have control over how often you move your body, or if you choose to progressively strength train, whether you do some mobility and flexibility stuff. You have control to a degree over how much sleep you're getting and the quality of sleep. You have control over how hydrated you are. So you have control over all of that stuff. Now, the exact finished product of all of your measurements and your metrics and your exact body composition and your exact physique, you don't necessarily have complete control over that. That's outcome based. But you have control over all of those inputs. And if you focus relentlessly on maximizing those inputs, then generally speaking, the outputs will tend to lean in your favor more times than not.
What do you think those basics of life look like? If you're trying, let's substitute the word happiness for winning. Okay. Because I think that a lot of people are really focused on living a happy life.
Yeah.
And what do you think some of the basics are that we can start to substitute our focus away from achieving happiness and start to putting in certain basic inputs in our life that will skew the odds in favor of living a more happy, joyful life?
So for me, I use the word fulfillment. I think fulfillment
I love that.
has a
That's mine.
slightly
Yeah.
deeper and more robust meaning than, say, happiness. Happiness is a fleeting feeling, and like all emotions, it will come and go. There are times throughout my day where I'm happier than other times, but happiness is not a state of permanence. You can design and live a life where fulfillment is a state of permanence, because, happiness has a lot to do, whether we want to admit it or not, with external circumstances. There are a variety of things that could go on in the world around me today that would increase the likelihood that I'm going to feel happy in that moment. And there's a whole bunch of external circumstances that could happen today that would decrease the chance of me being happy, which then means if I'm using happy as my barometer, then I'm at the mercy of external circumstances, which is working in the opposite direction. However, if I have created and built and model and live a life of fulfillment, that doesn't change regardless of external circumstances. There's nothing that I could read on the news today that could take away from my fulfillment or add to it, for that matter. So fulfillment to me is much more stable. And for me personally, once again, if I'm deciding that for me, my best life is living a fulfilled life, then I reverse engineer that and go, okay, what are the pillars of living a very fulfilled life? And I'll give them to you. Here are my 4 pillars in no particular order. Number 1 are relationships. I think for me to live a fulfilled life, I want to make sure I'm investing it with people that I care about. Now, I have 3 teenage children. I have an ex-wife. I have all sorts of friends. I have my father. I have my brother who I work with. I have my agent. Like, I have a core group of people that are very, very important to me in my life. And investing in those relationships helps lead to fulfillment. Second is my own mental and physical well-being. So my wellness, if you will. I devote a considerable amount of time to improving my mental and physical wellness. And the physical's a much easier one to describe. I mean, that's staying active and progressively working out and eating healthy and eating clean. That stuff is very important to me. But I found that I'm living a more fulfilled life when I'm mentally and physically well. The third one of those pillars is my craft. At this point in my life, speaking is very important to me. And being excellent on stage and delivering for my audiences and my clients is something that's important to me. And I want to get really good at the craft of speaking. So I spend an inordinate amount of time working on my craft and rehearsing and creating new content and delivering. So for me, at this stage in my life, working on my craft gives me tremendous fulfillment. And then the fourth one for me, we can just call this experiences or making of memories. It's, am I doing cool stuff?
Yeah.
Am I, an example, a month ago, I played basketball down at the Coach K Duke basketball fantasy camp. It's a fantasy camp for guys 35 years and older who still love to play the game of basketball. Like, it was an amazing experience. It's something I'll remember forever. If we fast forward 6 months from now, I'm going with a group of guys to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa, in Tanzania. It's going to take 10 days to ascend all the way to the top, but it's going to be an unbelievable a bonding experience, and it'll be an experience and a memory that I'll carry with me forever. So I try to have something on my calendar at least every quarter or 2 to 3 times a year that I look forward to, that I have to train for, that I know that doing this experience is going to change my life and is going to add to that fulfillment bucket. So the reason I share all of that, so if we look at those 4 things, every single thing I do in my life is to fill one of those 4 buckets. If it's outside of those 4 things, if it's not about my craft, if it's not about my relationships, if it's not about my experiences, or it's not about my health or wellness, then it doesn't get very much of my time, attention, or resources at present. Now, that's not to say that my 4 pillars need to be your 4 pillars or anyone watching or listening to this. But I know for me, I've defined winning as fulfillment. And I know that these 4 pillars are what lead to me living a full and fulfilled life. Then that's what's going to get all of my focus. And it does at present. So there are very few things that I give my time, attention, or money to that does not fall under one of those 4 things.
It's incredible. And it takes a tremendous amount of awareness to create those for yourself. I know you've said that you can't fix a problem that you don't have awareness about, right? And in my life, one of the things I devote a lot of time to is self-awareness. I think it has really become difficult in the world we live in today. It was never easy, but more difficult than ever to have awareness of what our true desires are, what we're really thinking, what are our original thoughts, right? And so I spend a lot of time thinking about those things and driving with nothing playing, or meditating in the mornings, and that
Love it.
quiet time with myself, to cultivate that relationship with myself would be one of my pillars. But I do think that creating those pillars is a really difficult endeavor within itself.
Absolutely. And it takes some time. Now, keep in mind, I believe you said you're 19 years old. I'm 50 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't have this level of awareness or this clarity on those 4 pillars when I was 19. Truth be told, I didn't have them at 29 or 39. This is something over the last few years that I've really started to develop the awareness and clarity on what's most important to me in my life. So there's no rush to figuring that out. But it also goes back to how we started this conversation, where you should be having a wide range of experiences and working on different skills and trying different things so that you can then slowly whittle down, what does a full life look like to you? And all you have to worry about it is at your present stage. You know, I can't predict if or when my 4 pillars will change, but they may change in 20 years. The 70-year-old version of me at that point might not be so interested in working on my craft. Like, that might be something that I'll remove the craft pillar and work on something else, or, you know, who knows? So I think it's important to give yourself the grace and space and the permission to explore, if we go back to your quadrant, to explore, what does living a fulfilled life look for me at 19? Or what does the fulfilled life look like for the next couple of years? And how can I reverse engineer and design and build a life and a vocation around something that allows me to do that? And notice that I didn't have a pillar for finances. I didn't have a pillar for money. And that is something that is still very important. Like, I'm a capitalist at heart, and I want to make sure that I earn a good enough living to provide for my family and to take care of my future self. But I also have figured out that, as we've been saying before, if I focus on those 4 pillars, financial abundance just becomes a natural byproduct of that. If I get really good at my craft and I develop really solid relationships and I am mentally and physically fit and I put myself in rooms or on mountains or in gyms with some amazing people, then the financial abundance will naturally just follow. So I don't have to have a pillar that focuses on making money or building wealth. Those things will happen naturally because I'm attracting everything it is that I want in my life by living an abundant and fulfilled life. So those things will just come naturally.
I love that. Yeah, it's like the go-giver, right?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, focus on giving as much value as you can to other people.
Yes.
Alan and I were talking before about how that's one of our favorite books. I'm
Yes.
excited to interview both Bob Berg and John David Mann. Those guys are going to be awesome.
Yes.
I want to talk about Steph Curry, because I know that, like so many guys my age, I'm just fascinated with him. And I don't root for the Warriors, root for him, but I love watching him. And you've mentioned something about his mindset that I just am so focused on. It's about just focusing on the next play. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, sure. And one of the cool things about Steph, I mean, he's one of a handful of athletes in any sport that has literally changed the way the game has been played. I mean, his ability to shoot the ball, especially from long range, has changed the way the NBA has approached playing and approached winning. You know, when I was growing up, the teams of the 80s and 90s, the Celtics and the Lakers, and then, of course, Michael Jordan and the Bulls, you know, barely relied on a 3-point shot. It was more of an afterthought. It was attack the basket or have some type of mid-range game. And occasionally, if someone was open, shoot a 3 and it would just be a bonus. And the game has changed tremendously because of Steph Curry. I mean, you know, his ability to shoot the long range ball. If you look at shot maps now with teams, there's almost nothing going on in the mid range for the most part.
Yeah.
Everything is either at the basket or it's a kick out for a 3 or for an open 3. So he's so remarkable. He's changed the game. And one other thing before we dive into next play, and this will tie a nice red thread to some of the other things we've been talking about. Most people know that Steph's dad, Dell Curry, played in the NBA. Played for a dozen years and was a great long-range shooter. Statistically, one of the better 3-point shooters the game has ever seen. And what I want folks to know is the fact that his dad was a great long-range shooter in the NBA is not the reason Steph is also a great long-range shooter. It's because his dad planted very important seeds in Steph when he was young. And the seed that he planted is, if you want to be good at shooting, then you have to go into the gym and practice shooting. You
Mm.
have to get in reps. So at the earliest of ages, Dell would bring Steph and his brother Seth into the gym, and they would just watch their dad shoot and get repetition after repetition. And he basically modeled for them that repetition is not punishment. That repetition is how you get good at anything, especially the skill of shooting. So yes, did he pass on some favorable genetics of elite hand-eye coordination and balance and depth perception? Sure. Was it an advantage that Steph and Seth were around NBA locker rooms and got to hold a ball when they were really little and their dad got to teach them certain skills? Absolutely. Those things were certainly helpful. But the most important thing that Dell modeled for his kids was, if you want to be good at anything, you have to get in repetition consistently during the unseen hours. And Steph and Seth both saw that modeled for them and then basically lived that out. And that's the reason they were so good. So the reason I share that is every single parent watching or listening to this right now, or future parents, know that you can give that same gift to your child. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to show them how to shoot a basketball or that your kid will grow up to be in the NBA, but it means you can give your child the gift of showing them that consistent work and consistent repetitions during the unseen hours is the key to excellence in any area of life. And that's a gift that I've tried to model and teach for my own children, and that I would recommend any and every parent or future parent right now watching or listening to this gives to their child as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love the idea of the unseen hours because right now it feels like my friends and I were joking when we were in London, we were going on trips, like people would only book trips so that they could take the pictures and show other people that they were there, right? And it's like, what are you doing? We have a life to live. And we are living such performative lives that oftentimes we neglect the unseen hours. And what the unseen hours look like is something that you would not want to show to the world. And the people that I respect the most, at this young age, I've had the great opportunity to meet so many people I look up to.
Yeah.
And one of the traits that I've seen the most is they do things they're proud of in the unseen hours.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've learned to do in my life is I live a life that I'm proud of in the unseen hours. And what that means is working out, staying consistent, being authentic. And if I didn't wake up and work out this morning, which I did not, then like not trying to pose as if I did, right? And all of that authenticity with the unseen hours. What do the unseen hours mean to you?
So this was a term I heard from my good friend and longtime colleague, Drew Hanlon, who started Pure Sweat Basketball. And Drew's arguably the best strategic skills coach on the planet. He works with guys like Joel Embiid and Jason Tatum and I mean, just a long roster of really good players. And Drew's the one that actually came up with the concept that he termed unseen hours. And it's basically, in basketball terminology, it's everything you do when the lights aren't on. There are no referees there. There are no cheerleaders there. There's no cameras there. There's no fans in the stands. It's what are you doing when no one else is watching? And he correctly found out that what you do when no one's watching directly impacts what you're capable of doing when the whole world is watching. And for me, it's the same thing. I have a tremendous amount of pride in what I do during the unseen hours. But at the same time, and I can say this with humility and compassion, there was a time 10, 12 years ago where I kind of fell victim to what you just mentioned. I was so concerned with showing the world what I was doing during the unseen hours. And I would be either with my kids or at an event, and I spent more time trying to document that I was there or what I was doing instead of actually being present and focused on the people that I was with. And I can say that with a huge smile and a ton of self-forgiveness in my heart. I just didn't have the emotional maturity or bandwidth at that time to realize what I was doing. I wanted the whole world to see what a great father I was being, when in fact, in that moment, I wasn't being a great father because I was spending all of my time on my phone instead of connecting with my children. Now, like many things, I've learned that lesson the hard way, and I do a much better job of that today than I did previously. So I don't really concern myself now with posting a ton about what I do during my unseen hours because I want them to remain unseen. Now, occasionally I do because I'm also in the business of trying to help people up-level their lives and show people how they can make improvements. So a good portion of how they can do that is done during the unseen hours. So I want to find an appropriate balance where I can show folks or tell folks or describe to them some of the things that I and other high performers do during the unseen hours so that they can try to emulate and implement some of those things in their own lives. but I don't spend my entire time at the gym taking selfies of me being at the gym. And it's good to laugh, and it's good that we can wink at that. And anyone that is currently doing that, I don't say that to disparage them. I say that with nothing but compassion, because I was that guy 10 to 12 years ago. But now for me, I try to be fully present and fully invested in everything that I'm doing, and then occasionally make a post or record a video just to share a little bit about what happens during those unseen hours.
Yeah.
Just a quick note from me, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify and you've enjoyed this episode so far, the one thing that you could do to create a better podcast for the future, yes, you're a part of this, is to leave a review. Leave a 5-star review or a 4-star if you think I deserve it. I hope I'm not below that. And just tell the world what you really think of this podcast, how it's supported you, how it's helped you grow, what you've learned. And it would also help me just understand how I can continue to show up better for the world and create a better place for people to learn and grow. Thank you.
I love that you say you learned it the hard way too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you learn lessons, right?
Of course.
You go through it. When I'm a baseball coach, catching specific. So I was a big catcher all throughout high school, and I've worked with the Catching Camp, which is a phenomenal national catching organization. And one of my greatest mentors is the head coach, Jay Weaver.
Oh, cool.
And I remember my first day there, he told me, my goal is to make you fail as miserably as I possibly can. And I'm like, some freshman, I'm a pretty good catcher. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And now as I've become a coach with the same organization, had some private clients as well, I have learned that the only real way to learn something and get to let's say this point right here, the middle for all the listeners where my hand is where we're trying to get to. The only way you can do that is by first failing by going too far, then failing by not going far enough, then little by little, incrementally failing less far from that median where you're supposed to be, right?
Yes.
And it's that failure, actually failing because you tried,
Yes.
that gets you to the success or whatever outcome you're trying to do. And you are now at this point where you maybe are not posting all of your unseen hours because you failed. You posted too much first, and then you might have not posted enough, and now you're finding the balance. And the balance is found, that dynamic middle is found through action.
Absolutely. And that's, again, one of the best gifts we can give ourselves, and one of the best gifts we can give either our children or the people we care the most about, is the autonomy to fail and the encouragement to go for it. And really what it takes is changing what many people consider their definition of failure. So I'm 50 years old. I'm a product. I basically grew up in the 80s and in the 90s. And when I was growing up in my household, failure was a bad word. Failure was like the other F word, that you would do everything you could do to not fail. That you didn't want to fail a test, or you didn't want to get cut from the team, or you didn't want, because those were actually bad signs. So I've had to really redefine that in my head, and that was to no fault of my parents. My parents did the best they could with the tools they had at that time. But with my children, I'm trying to do things differently and letting them know that, hey, failure is just a yardstick. Failure is just it's a proving ground. It's a way that you can figure out where you are on that continuum of where it is that you're trying to go, and that failure is never permanent. And one of the most important things that I try to model for my children, but I hope that they emulate, is the ability to be resilient, is the ability to fail at something, learn a very important lesson from it, and then have the optimism and enthusiasm to try it again. And as you just said, slowly whittle down and course correct until you're going to hit that bullseye. Yeah. Sometimes you shoot short, sometimes you shoot long, sometimes you shoot right, sometimes you shoot left. Well, let's learn from each of those and slowly start to whittle it down until we get where we need to be. And we can only do that if we look at failure as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity to learn a new lesson. And as long as it doesn't dim our enthusiasm or our optimism, then we can keep going. So at present, today, I mean, I don't worry about failure at all. You know, I mean, I know even in my own business, in my speaking business, for 3 straight years, I set a revenue goal of revenue that I wanted to earn as a corporate keynote speaker. And for 3 straight years, I fell short of that goal. Yeah. So one could say I failed, but I learned so many different lessons and grew so much as a speaker and as a small business owner during those years that it allowed me finally in the 4th year to then hit that mark and finally hit that goal. But then what I did as soon as I hit that goal is I recalibrated and said, okay, I need to change and raise the bar for next year and be able to try and hopefully hit that goal again. So I didn't allow failing 3 straight years of hitting that revenue goal to in any way dampen my spirits or my optimism or my enthusiasm. I actually looked at it as a good thing. Like, man, I fell just a little bit short. I was so close. What do I need to do differently next year to maybe get a different outcome? So for me, I try and lean into that. And for me personally, I want it to be around a coin flip. I want to set goals so lofty that I only hit them about half of the time, which means in theory, I'm failing half of the time. And I get just as excited when I fall short because I know that there's a way that I can go in and learn a powerful lesson and then do it differently the next time.
Yeah. And I imagine it's like, I don't want to fail, right? I don't want to fail.
Of course.
But I'm going to set goals so high that if I fail, failing is better than a lower goal and me succeeding.
Absolutely.
Right? I want to set goals so big, so ambitious that failure is not actually bad. It's just an opportunity for me to grow.
Yes.
And I want to put myself in positions where I can fail, where that's a possibility, not because I want to fail, but because I want to grow.
Yes.
And I want my failure because it's going to be inevitable in the positions that I'm putting myself into to not be a slap in the face or something that makes me look down and hold my head, but something that actually motivates me to go forward and be better in the future.
I love that because as you just said, one of the ways to hedge against failing is to lower your standards and lower your expectations so low that it'd be impossible to fail. But that's not living a fun or fulfilled life. So to me, the higher we can raise that bar and stretch our limits, the better. Now, you mentioned you have a baseball background. I have a basketball background. Well, failure is already inherently built into both of those sports. I mean, I don't know near as much about baseball as you do, but I know enough to know that even the best hitters in the world either strike out or get out 7 out of 10 times. So if you can hit the ball or get on base 3 out of 10 times, you're world class at your craft, at least at the skill of hitting. So that means 70% of the time you technically failed. Basketball is more of a coin flip. The best shooters shoot around 50%, which means every other shot is going to be a make or a miss. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge, to accept and surrender to the fact that those are possibilities. You know, of course, you don't want to strike out. I don't want to miss a jump shot, but it's important that we own the fact that those are both very realistic possibilities. To me, one of the traits that the best winners have is the acknowledgement that they can lose, that there is another side of that coin that is possible. And it's being able to play in both of those worlds that's so important. Now, you don't want to lose. That's not your preference, but you better have the humility to acknowledge that it is definitely possible. So I have the skill sets and the ability to achieve my speaking goal, but I also have it in me to fall short. Like I have to own both sides of that. And to me, that's really important. And it also will relieve some pressure when you can acknowledge and accept the fact that if you're capable of being great, you're also capable of sucking. It is part of the human condition, and it is okay to own both of those things. To me, that's what gives us full expression and full freedom, is to understand that, yes, all of these are possibilities, but I'm going to focus on the things I have control over, especially during the unseen hours. I'm going to be as consistent as possible, and I'm going to put myself in a position that gives me the best chance to be successful as often as possible. And then when things fall short and I'm not successful or I fail, whether it's at a single at bat or a single shot or a single year's worth of speaking, then I'm going to be able to look back on that and I'm going to learn some lessons. I'm going to figure out how I can reverse engineer it and change things and do things slightly differently moving forward. Because what I said earlier is so important. Failure is never permanent. It's momentary. And that's really where the entire concept of next play comes in, which I know you touched on earlier. So we might as well swerve in that direction now so I fell a little bit short of my goal. What's the next play? You know, I struck out that at bat. What's the next play? I missed that shot. What's the next play? That conversation didn't go as well as I had hoped. What's the next play? And as long as we're focused on making our next play our best play, then we're not wasting the adversity that we just had. We're not wasting that challenge. We're not wasting that strikeout or that missed shot. We're actually using it as fuel to move forward, which again is such a liberating approach to have because it means I don't worry at all about outcomes. I'm always focused on the process. I'm always focused on the inputs, and I can use the outcomes or the results as kind of a measuring stick. And when they don't line up the way that I'd hoped, then how can I change something on the process or the inputs to try again? And let's see if we can get a better outcome this time.
Right. And something I notice about you is you obviously care so much about what you do.
I
And
do.
you have this energy that is magnetic as I'm here listening to you. The room is just on fire. And something that I see a lot of among young kids when we talk about lowering that bar so that we can hedge against failure is they don't even just lower the bar. They act as if the goal doesn't mean that much to them.
Mm.
And so this idea, I just wrote it down here, of nonchalance
Yes.
is such this like almost wannabe trait among kids these days, among people my age and my peers. And what I find is people act nonchalant, so just in case they fail at the thing, it never even mattered that much to them in the first place.
Yes. And there's a few sister words to nonchalance. And one of those would be apathetic, indifferent.
Yeah.
And those are definitely not words that I believe will lead to an enriching, fulfilling life. Now, you don't have to care about everything with equal fervor. Like, you don't have to be excited about everything in the world, but I highly recommend you whittle it down to the things that do excite you, the things that do give you energy, the things that you are curious about or fascinated by or passionate about, and that you don't take a nonchalance approach to that you try and go all in and just live with the fact that you could fall short, that you might not hit your target, that you might not get the results that you had hoped. But here's the thing. If everything you do has this indifference to it or is somewhat apathetic or you're nonchalant about everything, then even when you do hit it, it doesn't really matter because you don't really seem to care about it. So to me, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to put yourself out there and to tell the world, this matters to me. And I'm passionate about this, and I'm going to go after it with everything I've got. And I'm well aware of the fact that I could fall short and I could fail, but I'm okay with that because I know that I gave it everything that I had. To me, that will lead to a much more fulfilling life. And I understand logically the nonchalant approach is, as you just said. So if I don't reach my goal, who cares? I didn't try anyway. And I've gone through portions of my life where I've had that approach with certain things. And I tell you what, it'll leave you feeling very empty and very hollow. So I would not recommend taking that approach. I would recommend putting yourself on the line, announcing to the world what you think is important and what really drives you and excites you, and going after it with everything you've got.
Yeah.
And if you fall a little short, it's okay. Learn a lesson and try again. Or maybe even learn the lesson that I'm not as passionate about this thing as I originally thought, and maybe this will put me on a better course to try something different. All of these are great options. But to me, indifference and apathy are two words that I hope are never within 7 degrees of someone describing me.
Yeah. Some of the best basketball players you've worked with, like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, were they nonchalant?
No, not at all. No, they were very chalant in everything that they did, their approach. But they had also realized, like, I love the game of basketball. This game is very, very important to me, and I want to be the best player that I'm capable of. So some of that takes, as you said before, some exploration to be able to figure those things out. And I say this with tremendous amount of love and compassion, is I want folks to give themselves the grace and space and to have the patience that it is okay when you're younger to not know what your thing is, to not know what it is that you want to do. Maybe you haven't found the thing that makes you want to be passionate and energetic. Maybe most of the things you found, you do feel very nonchalant about, but use that as a marker that you're just not on the right path at the moment. So continue to find things that you couldn't even try to be nonchalant about. Like, I love what I do so much. There's no way that I could take that approach. Like, it's not in my wiring. I really love what I do to the degree that the passion and the enthusiasm is not manufactured.
Right.
It's just a byproduct of being in positions of doing the things that I love.
I love that. And that's, I think, should be the goal for everybody in their lives. All right, I have 2 more questions.
Sure.
The first of which is a fun one. The second of which is a great place to leave this for everybody and kind of tie the ribbon. But when I've watched and listened to a ton of your stuff leading up to this, and I hope it shows. But a question I've had since hearing all the people that you've got to meet, all the basketball players, is if you could have dinner with any NBA player ever that you've never got to meet or talk to, who would that be?
I've had an opportunity to meet Michael Jordan a few times, but when I say meet, I literally mean just a quick handshake and keep it moving. So I've never had a conversation with him. And when I was your age and growing up, I mean, he was on 10 different posters in my room. I had his Wheaties box on my dresser. Like, I still consider him the greatest player of all time, but he was such a meaningful role model and aspirational figure when I was younger. I would have to say Michael Jordan. I just think it would be phenomenal to be able to sit down with him and hear some of his stories and hear his journey. But most importantly, I would want to ask him questions where he would share some things that he hasn't shared as publicly as some of the stories that we know, and would love to really dive deeper. But that's someone that has just been an icon basically my entire life. I mean, being a young basketball player and idolizing him on the court. And here it is, here I am 50 years old and I'm still wearing Jordans and have an entire closet full of them. Like, he changed culture, he changed fashion, he changed sports. I mean, it's just iconic. So yeah, for me, without question, if we're going to relegate it to a former NBA player, it would definitely be Michael Jordan.
What would some of those questions be that you'd ask him?
The first one, we've all heard the story of how he got cut from the varsity in 10th grade. And then he grew a lot the next summer, worked on his game, came back, and then, the rest is history. I would love to ask more questions about kind of his internal dialogue and how that really made him feel and what was his approach. And at any point after getting cut, did he even consider quitting basketball and going into baseball or golf or some of the other things that he loved and was good at? Or, I would like to learn a little bit more about that. I'd also like to learn a little bit more about his time at UNC, playing for the legendary Dean Smith. And of course, he was one of the better college players, and Michael Jordan was great at UNC, but he wasn't the iconic superstar that he came to be with the Chicago Bulls. So I would also love to learn how Dean Smith and his time at UNC helped create the foundation that would then allow him to go on to be that great. So yeah, there would be a bunch of questions that I think would be just under the layer of maybe what he shared publicly and we've seen on things like The Last Dance, but I think it would be phenomenal. But I will say this, I've met him probably a dozen times, just again in passing, because I used to work different events where he was there or he would be the sponsor. And I've met a lot of famous people in my life. He is the only person that I've ever met that the first time he walked into the room, I think my heart skipped a beat. Like, I couldn't even believe that the guy that I had on posters all over my room as a teenager just walked in the room and I got to shake his hand. It was just an absolutely electric feeling.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think I would want to ask some of those same questions as well. I've thought about that, and I would ask. I think for my athlete, I'd want to talk to Bryce Harper.
Oh yeah,
I'm a Phillies fan, and just that pressure that LeBron had as well of being on Sports Illustrated at 15 years old and hitting 500-foot bombs while you're in high school, right? I'd want to talk to him. So we started this conversation. We talked a bit about the forward gap, and we then talked about the performance gap, the knowing doing gap that causes some frustration. This conversation, there's a lot of practical takeaways people can take from it, but it has been esoteric in a lot of ways, a lot of ideas we've been talking about. So I want to leave the listeners with just maybe one thing that they can do to apply what they've learned today to start to actually see progress in their lives towards their goals, closing that performance gap a little bit.
I'm going to give you a 3-step formula for what I would recommend folks do. So ultimately, what I would imagine after hearing a conversation like this, it will spark an interest in a slight behavior change. Someone probably is going to want to create a new habit, if you will. So I'm going to give you a 3-step formula right now for how you can improve any habit or any behavior. The first thing is, it's called pick one. And that is, you want to pick one singular habit or behavior that you want to improve. There's a good chance after watching a conversation like this or scrolling on Instagram or reading the stuff that folks read, that they might have a list of 4 or 5 habits that they want to improve. And I certainly can appreciate and respect that ambition, but I want to encourage you to just pick one. And here's a way that you can whittle it down. Write down 3 or 4 habits right now that if you add these habits to your life, you believe it will move you closer to winning or to living a fulfilled life. And then at the same time, write down 3 or 4 things that you need to stop doing. Because right now you're most likely doing something that's impeding your ability or undermining your ability to live a fulfilled life or to win. So you write down 3 or 4 things that you think would help and 3 or 4 things you need to stop you think would help. But then when you have that list of 6 to 8 to 10 total, I just want you to circle one of them. Not one on each side, just one total that you believe will give you the best chance to be successful or to make forward progress in your life. And that's because as human beings, we're not designed to chase multiple things at once. We're not designed to split our focus. We're designed to have hyper focus. And I've been writing down quotes ever since I was your age. It started on a yellow legal pad where I'm handwriting down quotes, and now I've got a pretty robust database that I keep them in. But one of my favorite quotes is, if you chase two rabbits, they both get away.
Yes.
So instead, you have to pick which rabbit you're going after and just go after that one and grab it by the tail. So pick one habit that you want to focus on. Then the second thing is, you need to make a commitment to yourself to do that habit, or if it's in the case of not do that habit, but either way, to do that habit for the next 66 days. Generally speaking, the average habit, if you can commit to doing something daily for 66 straight days, you'll start to groove that new behavior. It doesn't mean that anything magical happens on the 67th day, but if you decide to do this one new behavior every day for 66 straight days, research has shown that it'll start to become more fluid, that you will have erased most of the friction, and that'll just become a part of what you do. So because I'm old school and I'm analog, I want you to just get a paper calendar or print out a calendar, and I want you to take a big red Sharpie, and every day that you do the one thing that you said you were going to do, put a big red X on that date. And I want you to see in the next 66 days how many red X's you can get. Now, if you are watching or listening to this, that means you're a human being. And if you're a human being, you are flawed and you are fallible, which means the chance of you getting 66 straight red X's from the day you start is fairly low, because there's going to be a day where you'll most likely fall off. There's going to be a day where you don't feel like it, it's not convenient, and you have a misstep. And my only challenge to you is to not miss 2 days in a row. Don't let anywhere on their calendar, let there be 2 white spaces in a row. Put a big red X every day that you do the thing. And if you happen to fall off on one day, give yourself the grace and space and compassion to be human, but then make sure you do not miss the next day and see how many red X's you can get. So don't worry about doing 66 in a row, but see how many red X's you can get out of the next 66 days. And I can tell you this, you get 62, 63, 64 red X's out of 66. That's some pretty good consistency and some pretty good momentum. And then the third step is, we call this keep the spotlight on. And this is the spotlight of accountability. I want you to recruit a board of directors, an inner circle of people that care about you. This could be your friends, your family, your siblings, your parents. It could be a coworker. It could be someone in your community, a neighbor, but whoever it is, I want you to recruit 3 or 4 people that you know care about you and want to see you successful. And you tell them about this one thing that you're going to do. You tell them that you are relentlessly committed to doing this thing as many times as you can in 66 days, but you know that you need them to hold you accountable, and you're going to ask them to check in with you every day for the next 66 days and ask if you did the thing that you said you were going to do. And depending on who they are, I mean, if it's someone you sit down to dinner with every night, that can be dinner conversation. If it's someone that lives in a different state, maybe they'll text you every evening to ask if you did it. But get these 3 or 4 people to hold you accountable and ask if you did that thing. Now, one emotion that unites all human beings outside of sociopaths is we don't like letting down the people that care about us and love us. So on the day that you don't feel like doing that thing, it's not convenient, you're tired, you don't feel good, but you know 3 or 4 people are going to check in with you that night and ask if you did it, that might be just what you need to get over that hump and to actually get it done. And it's people holding you accountable. So if you pick one thing, you're committed to doing it as many times as you can in 66 days, and you recruit people to hold you to the fire and make sure you do that thing, there's a very good chance at the end of that 66 days, you will have grooved a new habit. And then here's my challenge after that. Pick a new habit. And then repeat this process over and over. And as James Clear likes to mention in Atomic Habits, we can call this habit stacking, where if you want the next habit you pick to be somewhat tangential to the one that you just had, that will make those two things interrelated and connected. So let's just say that you say, I'm going to go for a 20-minute jog every morning when I wake up. That's the one habit I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about changing my nutrition. I'm not going to buy a Peloton bike. I'm not going to worry about anything else, but every morning I'm going to jog for 20 minutes. So that's your one thing. And you get out your paper calendar, and every day that you wake up and jog, you put a red X on it. And then you told 3 or 4 people to check in with you. And I'm going to text you every night and ask you, Jack, did you go for a jog this morning? How long did you run for? Did you run outside or on a treadmill? Did you listen to something while you were jogging? Just make sure that you're doing it. And at the end of those 66 days, jogging in the morning will slowly become just something that you do. It's part of your unseen hours. And then if you want to habit stack that, then you say, every morning when I get back from my jog, I'm going to drink a green smoothie. So now my new habit is going to be the green smoothie, but you're going to connect those two like Pavlov's dog. So now every time
Yeah.
you walk in from the house from your jog, you're going to crave that green smoothie. And then at the end of those 66 days, now you jog and you drink a green smoothie to start your day. And then you pick another habit. And as you can see by doing the sheer math, in one calendar year, you can add 4, 5, or 6 unbelievably helpful and valuable habits that move you closer to living a full, fulfilled life. You'll be a completely different human being 1 year from now if you just apply that.
Dude, I love it. That's so practical, so tactical. It's amazing. This has been phenomenal. I've done over 140 episodes and one of my favorites ever. So
Cool.
I really appreciate you coming on, man.
My pleasure. This was a lot of fun. You do a phenomenal job, and I look forward to watching you continue to grow and succeed.
Thank you, Alan. All right. This has been The Grateful Podcast.
We did it! We made it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much. And thank yourself for showing up and committing to yourself to better yourself and your life for you and the people around you tomorrow. It's really impressive. I know with the attention spans that we have today, showing up for an hour or however long today's episode was is really impressive. So thank you. I have one ask for you. Before we move on from our days together, who did you think of today while you were listening, while you were watching? Who popped into your head during the best moment of today's episode? Whoever it is, you can send a time-stamped version of this episode with that certain moment that made you think of them to that person. And when you do that, they're going to feel so seen by you. They're going to feel so loved by you. I know it can be a little weird, but you can just say, hey, this made me think of you. And when you do that, you create a ripple in the world. You serve. You make this world a better place. So I encourage you, if you had someone that popped up today that you think of with this episode, who you think this could help better their lives and the lives of the people around them, then please send this over to them. Create a ripple. Make an impact. That's how we change the world. One person at a time. That's my goal. I want to change your life. I want you to go and change others. That's how a legacy is built. So I thank you for showing up today for yourself and the people around you to make this world a better place. Don't forget that no matter what you're going after, what gap you have between where you are and where you want to be, no matter how big it is and no matter how much anxiety that might create for you or how much excitement that creates for you, there's a present moment. Stay here. Be grounded. Be grateful for all the things and the people you have around you as you continue to go and serve the world and make this world better. I'm proud of you, and I'll see you next week. Stay grateful. Stay hungry. This has been The Grateful Podcast. Thank you.